Hello, I'm William Carver, Core Services and Alliances Director here at SCC, working as part of our digital workplace practice. And I'm delighted to be hosting SCC Simplify User Experience. So today we're going to be talking about all things to do with user experience. I'm delighted to be joined by a couple of colleagues of mine, John and Gemma. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Will. So, yes, Jonathan Singh. So I'm currently in the role of product architect within SCC Digital Workplace. So I've been with SCC about 16 years, working in managed service pre-sales before that. So yeah, got a good close affinity to services, how we design, build services for our customers.
Hi, Gemma. I'm a management consultant for change and adoption within the advisory services of Digital Workplace.
Excellent. So look, we're here to talk about user experience and all things to do with it. It's become a strategic imperative for organizations. Why?
A very good question. Thank you, Will. I think within the commercial world, end users are getting very used to that really seamless, intuitive technology. I think one of the things we noticed most when coming back from back into the workplace from COVID was that transition of going from home, everything works beautifully, into the office. It didn't. There was that real kind of friction with the technology that we have. And that's where you start to see that sort of fragmentation and that impact on productivity day in, day out within businesses. So removing all of that friction and actually enabling the workforce with the right tools, the right connectivity, the right devices really starts to empower what they're doing in the workplace. And you start to see those real tangible gains within the business when everybody is enabled and really kind of thriving in that workplace. So linking that to what the businesses are actually trying to do and where they're trying to get to and the goals they're trying to achieve, absolutely, totally part of the strategy going forwards.
And part of this is key around employee retention, right? I mean, it's a key component which sits within all things to user experience.
Yeah, we know that, definitely. I mean, it starts with the first interaction you have with IT. First day, everyone knows what's your first experience when you get your new laptop. You start it up, boot it up. Does it work well? Is it easy to get hold of? Do you need to go find IT so they can set systems up for you? So we know from that very first interaction with IT that user experience is key. And that goes through the whole time that users then with that organization. For some now, it's quite a big differentiator. You know, how is the IT support service? How does it enable them to do that job? People don't want frustration and friction caused by IT in their day-to-day role. Otherwise, that can cause people to look elsewhere. So we know that is key.
And I guess lots of organizations are looking at user experience in the context, not just of competitive requirements, but also just in terms of driving productivity. So where I guess maybe a good way to start this is what do you see that's going wrong today that needs to be looked at in terms of making the change?
I think where businesses have that one size fits all approach, they're obviously missing a trick. You've got all the different requirements from both the different types of job roles, but also what people do and how they actually run their day to day. Actual, the day in the life of what they're actually doing. So starting to really dig into that and understand all the different flavors you've got within the workforce. So it's starting to look at personas as well, what tools they're using, how they're using them, where those friction points are. So that's where you do start looking at that day in the life and understanding all of those points that are actually bringing down that productivity. And as I said, the fragmented tools and business processes and operations, where can those improvements be made? So really tailoring that to the specific organization. So you've got, healthcare will be entirely different to, let's say, the aviation industry, for example. So, really different flavors from one business to the next. You have to tailor it. And of course, as human beings, you've got different demographics within businesses as well. Some might have a much younger demographic. Some will have a complete broad spectrum in more sort of healthcare services where you've got graduates coming in and you've got, doctors and what have you that have been in the industry for a huge long time. Their approach to technology will be very, very different. Some literally being born and grown up with it, using very different devices and applications to what a 60-year-old would be used to and using. So again, you've really got to tailor those approaches so you get the most, you're enabling your employees to get the most out of their working day and being productive.
Yeah, definitely agree. And as you say, I think it's cross-functional as well. It's not, one size fits all. If you do a role, this is the technology, therefore you get because you use these systems. We know people like to work different. So some people may be more mobile when they work. Some people have more reliance, for example, on the battery life within their device or the portability of the device or the peripherals they attach to. Some might want a larger screen. Some may want two screens. So even though they fulfill the same role, we understand that looking at that persona, cross-functional persona, across the different roles, we can understand what it is that person wants from their IT, how it will best serve them, and how they can be most productive.
I mean, which sounds great, but you could, of course, find yourself in a situation where you've generated, you've got 20,000 employees, you've got 20,000 personas. How do you manage that complexity, and where do you start to draw lines?
So this is where we do have some tooling and telemetry to actually help kind of refine these data insights that we've got, and you can start to see those patterns. You've got your operational data, you've got your technical data, but you've also got your sentiment data. And this is where we actually start to engage with the workforce and actually ask them how they feel about their experience. And this is where you can then build those personas that are very bespoke to the business. And so rather than having 20,000 different versions, you do need to have these groupings that are broad representatives of the different types of employees that you have within your business. So you can then start to tailor both the devices, the tools, the applications, but also how you actually communicate and engage with those employees as well. Going back to that whole one size fits all, there's so many businesses out there that if they've got a change or transformation, they will just send out a broadcast email. Well, if you've got 20% of the business will read email, and in fact, any communication expert listening to this will know 20% is it's not even 20, wildly optimistic. So how are you going to get to the other 80%? You need to look at the tools that they're using and their communication preferences, use those channels and tailor your different approach. So if you're getting that remaining 80%, you're then getting that time to productivity, that time to adopt whatever the changes that you're progressing. They'll get there quicker. So that's then going to remove that friction as well. Time to productivity, much the same as onboarding as well. Are you actually tailoring the onboarding communications and materials and collateral so that it's talking to the different types of personas that you've got in your business, and it's not just a one size fits all?
I mean, I think you've talked a little bit about the technology piece there, and I guess John, kind of in your wheelhouse is a lot the design of the whole thing. Lots of organizations will look at saying, I need to buy some new tooling, and kind of bluntly roll their eyes and go, oh my God, I'm not sure that's ever going to pay back to me because I've had bad experiences in the past. How do you try, and for example, I know things like Copilot's a really classic example. How do you try and make sure that those tools that you are putting in place are actually used?
Yes, the key to that is adoption of the new technologies. We know just deploying out a technology without some sort of guidelines or education or assistance to a user and how they can best utilize that within their role and be more productive. We know obviously AI is a big one now. We've got a lot of people out there who will use ChatGPT, Copilot to assist them day to day. And we know it's a really useful tool, but there's governance processes to look at around that. There's training processes. There's awareness of where and when it should be used. So it's that whole adoption piece, initially when you're deploying the technology, but then ongoing as well. People that are getting into bad habits, so they're using tools correctly still 6 months in the future, example. So using things like digital adoption platform to help do that initial education piece, and then the monitoring of how those tools are used ongoing as well.
Absolutely. I think understanding why you're bringing in a new tool as well. So going back to that return on investment, well, what does good look like? Example with something like Copilot, if you're pushing the adoption for more people to use it in Excel, for example, but actually within your business of 100 people, only 10 people use Excel, well, you're not going to get the other 90 people to use Copilot in Excel if they don't use Excel in the first place. So really understanding the profile of your organization to understand what good looks like so you know what you're actually going for. That can also help with identifying from a license right sizing perspective as well, making sure that the right people have got the right licenses for the right tools and applications in itself. So you can't just generically push one particular tool on everybody. It needs to be specific to what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, which again goes back to that day in the life of what is it that are the business processes, and what would you need to use something like AI to simplify or to optimize or to automate, and really understanding that on that at that real day-to-day level.
And I guess we talk a little bit around proactive experience management as being a key part of this. Can you just unpack that a little bit? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's definitely a key buzzword at the moment. I think, there's a proliferation now of DEX tools that are going out, being deployed out within organizations. There's a lot of...
Sorry, John, what's a DEX tool, just for those that might not know?
Yeah, sorry, Bill. So digital experience. So, monitoring digital experience on devices, monitoring the performance of the device, the performance the user gets from the IT systems, and try to fix things proactively. So proactive resolution is one of the key things people are trying to implement into their IT service now. So there's an aspiration of getting to a zero ticket IT, which sounds fantastical. It should be an aspirational piece. Whether realistically you can ever get to zero ticket is another matter. But I think trying to resolve things proactively before they've impacted a user's productivity is key. So where you can monitor key thresholds on the device performance, things like, how is the network performing? How are the applications performing? How is that device performing? Is the CPU powerful enough? Is there enough memory? Do you need to do some action to maybe resolve that issue before it impacts the user, and then identify other trends? So, for example, if it's a specific application or something that's causing issues, and there's multiple users, can you go out and deploy the latest patch to stop that affecting other users? So that aspiration of getting to zero ticket, like I say, is something you should try and achieve to get towards. But the other angle is those who kind of suffer in silence users. So where they may be experiencing issues and you haven't got a digital experience platform out there monitoring the real performance, they may just suffer in silence. So they may get frustrated. Again, we were saying about user retention, poor productivity. We've all sat there and maybe on a Monday morning waited as it's taken 10 minutes for our laptop to boot up, but we won't necessarily log a ticket with IT.
Sure.
If we can monitor that performance, resolve that performance for the user without them having to do anything remotely, and then resolve it for other users as well, we can help improve the productivity and the user experience and the satisfaction that user gets. Another key thing that's coming around the proactive piece is making sure the right user has the right device. So trying to move away from a fixed refresh to a intelligent sort of data-led refresh approach. So again, utilization of digital experience tools can help you guide you in the way to best utilize your investment in your devices. So moving away from a 3, 4, 5-year refresh strategy, you can proactively plan ahead saying, these are the devices that perform very badly for specific groups of users and having a big impact on productivity within the business. Take immediate action. So you may want to replace those devices, but you might actually want to upgrade the memory, upgrade the hard drive. There's big noise around at the moment around increase in device costs driven by memory and hard drive costs. So trying to make sure and understand, have you got the right technical resources within that device for that user, deliver for what they need now and ongoing in the future as well. Potentially you can look at redeploying devices within the estate as well. So from an ESG perspective, trying to prolong the life of that device before it potentially has to go to be remarketed or recycled or disposed of. So there's a lot can be done proactively by monitoring real time the experience users are getting within their devices.
And I guess doing all of this stuff, I mean, there is a degree of complexity in this, and we all know that, if you look across, statistically speaking, something like 90% of all transformation initiatives fail in reality. So what do boards typically get wrong when they're trying to approach change management?
So I think one of the biggest things that you need when you're going for a particular technology implementation or change, big enablement, you need a key sponsor. You have to have a strong leadership voice in that business that really enables and empowers the business to take that change on. You do have to lead from the top. It can't be done on the ground. And I think as well, a digital champions network. I'm a very strong advocate for that. So, and bringing that digital champions network together with that key sponsor to really then get the message out on the ground into the business. And the whole kind of almost like train the trainer. So, using the digital champions to really advocate any particular working practices, best practice, top tips, all that kind of stuff as well. So rather than just using that sort of one size fits all email, as I mentioned earlier, it's starting to really engage with the business in how they want to be engaged with. And that's also understanding the company culture as well. So is it, some leaders, it will be that raw sort of top down kind of leadership approach. Others, it's more collaborative. Others, it's more that kind of cascade messaging. So you need to understand what the culture is as well to be able to make sure that you are speaking to the business in the right way, in the way that they respond. But yes, making sure that you've got that key sponsor, I think, is absolutely integral to the success of any kind of big change program.
And I guess some of this is coming from the fact that very often sponsorship is coming out of a board at a top level without necessarily understanding day-to-day working life of individuals that work underneath them. What do you think? What do you think might catch people out or surprise them? And what does good look like in terms of trying to design some of this stuff?
I think that comes down to where do you get started? You've got to do the discovery to start with, and within that discovery, understand your stakeholders. So if the stakeholders themselves, and especially that key sponsor, if they don't get what we're doing and why we're doing it, so it's the what, why, the how, the when, the where, you've got to make sure that they get it first of all. If they're going to be the spokesperson, the leader behind it, absolutely. They also then need to know what's going on the ground. So bringing in those digital champions, exactly that. And then going into that day in the life of looking at those business processes on the ground, if they're being changed, if they're being impacted, whatever is going to be happening, you really need to understand the nuts and bolts of that to really understand and reflect, well, what kind of training, well, it's training needs analysis, what kind of training do we need? Do we just need some IT floor walkers on the day of a cutover, or do we need a whole series of demos, lunch and learns, user guides, videos, whatever it might be, to take people on that journey of whatever that change is? John mentions the digital adoption platforms, fantastic tools that are actually on-screen prompts that take you through a particular business process. And as they're going through that, they can check the data that you're putting into the different fields. So actually, at the end of a particular process, let's say submitting an expense, it's actually done in the right way first time. Everything's filled in correctly. So you're actually saving time overall there as well. You're not having to go back in and repeat the processes and correct the errors. It's done correctly first time round. So good data in, good data out. The individual, it's been a seamless and a good experience with that piece of technology. And from a productivity point of view, you've not wasted time in there either as well. So digital adoption platforms have got a sort of play a big role in that user experience as well.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, I think, being able to capture, monitor, measure the digital experience using tools before, during, and after a major change are key as well. So, where we can actually get metrics back on how things are performing. So if you deploy a new technology, new application, how is it actually working for users? And while you're monitoring it during that change process, for example, you may decide, oh, actually, this is having a negative impact on user experience, and then you can maybe adjust accordingly.
Sure.
Similarly, you can gather sentiment data. How does the user feel? These new technologies are deployed out. You find it easy to use? Is it making your job easy to do or harder? So again, kind of gathering all that information around the individual user experience that then be presented back to the board level and presented back of the impact of that change, and record hopefully a positive impact post-change as well. If you're expecting it to have improvements on productivity, you can then measure them post-change and kind of get some good quality data around how it's successful.
And does that look like a scorecard, or is that tooling, or is that reporting? How does that come? How do you feed that back up again?
Oh, I love a dashboard.
Yeah, sure. Everybody in IT does, right?
Absolutely. And I think dashboards play, I think, a really important role here, because it does actually allow the leadership to kind of, change the different filters and look at all of that data from different perspectives, whether it's the job role, whether it's location, whether it's departmental, and you can look at usage, you can look at all of those points of telemetry. So it's really, really useful insights. But when you've got those insights, that's where you get to make the data-led decisions. And it's a no-brainer, because the data tells the story. And I think where you've got things like the DEX score, so that's that digital employee experience score, it's looking at that operational data, which will, the tickets that you've got on your service desk. It's looking at the technical data, as John mentioned, all the telemetry points around the actual computer usage and applications. And then it's got the sentiment data. So that is, how do your employees actually feel about all of this, the change, the technology, whatever the key questions are that you're asking in that sentiment data. Pulls all of that together. And then you've also got that layer. So the data behind it is such an important part of any, actually understanding whether you've gained real success out of any particular change and adoption that you're leading with.
Yeah, once we've started collating those sources of data, as you're saying, the user sentiment data, the technical data, operational data, number of tickets, for example, this is where we can start forming experience level agreements, XLAs, that make it easier to kind of consolidate all that information together into a easy to digest view of, Now, what's the actual impact on the business? So, once you start designing those XLAs based on the requirements in your business, how it affects the productivity, we know that actually if performance on devices is slow, we can monitor those XLAs over time and identify points that are potentially driving that experience level agreement level down. So we can agree targets that potentially can then improve those.
So it's a process of continual improvement over time rather than a big bang approach, right? Yes. Okay. I mean, I'm conscious that we're running a little bit short on time, but if you were going to give a piece of advice to board levels looking at trying to make some changes around user experience, what would you say kind of the one or two key things that you'd point them towards? Where does this start?
I think being able to, first of all, measure it is key. You can't make any decisions until you've got that key metric. So we mentioned digital experience tools. What is the actual real performance like for users out there? So SLAs has historically been as a view of how well things are performing, but well-known analogy that I think we probably used a few times, the watermelon effect: green on the outside, red on the inside. Everything looks great. The service levels we've designed are all green. So, time to fix, for example, is great. But ultimately, if you're unable to measure truly what it means from a user to experience and use that IT, so it's not just how the device and the applications perform, might also be how easy is it actually to raise a ticket with a service desk? Do you have self-serve technologies that make it easy for a user to go get a peripheral or a replacement device if it fails? So those kind of softer elements as well around what it's like to use the IT services are key to be able to measure and track and then identify actions that you need to do.
Yeah, I think the day in the life, that's a really good place to start, really getting under the hood of, well, what is it that your employees are trying to do to go through their working day to achieve whatever those business goals are, and actually making sure that you then start to tie the two together. Because if there's that disconnect between the strategic imperatives versus what people are doing on the ground, and there is that friction just in their day-to-day slog, you're just not going to get to where you need to get to. So really understanding what the business is struggling with so you can then get those quick fixes, those real sort of tactical quick wins to actually move that needle forwards. And then also once you've got all of that, the data, you've understood what they're doing on the ground, you can then start to really look at that roadmap and the strategy ahead.
John, Gemma, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been really interesting. And for anyone that's out there that wants to find out a little bit more, please do feel free to go to scc.com, where you'll find our productive worker and circular IT advisories, and we can provide you with more advice and more information specific to your organization. Thank you and goodbye.